Non-Americans of Reddit who visited the United States, what was the weirdest or shocking thing you saw? The TV show To Catch a Predator. There must have been some sort of marathon of it, because I remember my whole family watching it, jaws dropped, for hours. Backwoods northern Wisconsin gas station with big fence on which was painted in enormous letters, chainsaws, cheese, guns. Also the big yellow signs on 41 that just say cheese wine fudge. Or the sign on 41 that has a religious thing on one side and an ad for a strip club on the other. Just the scale of things. Everything seems to be supersized. Also the huge distances between places. Tucson to Las Vegas might not look so far away when looking at a map, but they are over 600 kilometers apart. That's almost equal to crossing my entire home country. Distance driving is one thing I have always found interesting as a difference between America and Europe. Anything less than 6 hours isn't even really a road trip in the States. It might just be for a quick weekend trip somewhere. Did a road trip from LA to San Francisco. The homelessness in California shocked me, completely shocked me. When in LA our hotel was in Santa Monica and in the evening it was swamped with homeless people. Santa Monica is called the home of the homeless. It literally has that name from I think Harry Shearer's, from The Simpsons, etc. radio show since the 80s, and San Francisco keeps getting worse. It is really sad. There is a major lack of affordable housing. Your news. It's over sensationalized. I couldn't believe it when I visited. Every news program seems much less like news and more like reality TV. It seems like it's very hard for you to get unbiased information and that there's an information overload. Also all the news are only about the US. There's a whole world out there. An American here to say you are 100% correct, and there are people who still think the news is actually the news and reporting facts. Went to New Orleans, checked into a hotel. The receptionist drew on a map then handed it to us. If you stay within this area, you'll be safe. What? Sounds like you got a good hotel, Mayo. Pink firearms. I'm not used to seeing any kind of gun, but someone apparently decided to make guns and market them specifically to girls. Only worth buying if the bullets are also pink. One of my friends visits Florida about once a year and he says the strangest thing is that it's full of either super fat or super fit, as in healthy, muscular, etc., with little in between. Let me introduce you to the dad bod. When I first arrived here, the most noticeable thing was the size of one person's small pho noodle soup was the size of my whole family's dinner soup back home. Pho portions in the US are ridiculous. Even as an American, used to the large portion sizes of food, many pho restaurants serve up big gulp quantities for some reason. The news. It's not news. It's some people giving their opinion filled in with a million adverts for drugs and lawyers. It's really weird. I went on a road trip with my family from San Francisco to LA last summer. It was my third trip to the US, but the first for the rest of my family. The tipping definitely threw my parents off. They did not understand it, and they did not like it. We did still tip, though. My dad still talks about the 12-lane highway we drove on. LA is not a very fun town to be in as a tourist, and Hollywood Boulevard isn't nice. Never in my life did I expect to be called baby and asked if was mad at someone, because I didn't want his mixtape. Also, you guys clearly have no clue what licorice is supposed to be or taste like. On a positive note, the whole family was absolutely head over heels in love with the nature. I lost my heart to Yosemite, and the rest of my family adored Sequoia National Park. The wildlife having no fear of humans was awesome. Never in my life did I expect to be called baby and asked if was mad at someone, because I didn't want his mixtape. As someone who lives in LA, this is the most LA sentence I've ever read, lol. I met a guy in Harlem who asked if he could borrow $50,000. I was 16 in Vegas and was walking around at night when I encountered a person with a Mickey Mouse mascot head on, laying on the ground passed out with beer bottles in each hand. Oh boy. That's not America. That's Vegas. I'm from Belgium and visited my brother who did an internship in America. His boss told us some things to visit while we were there and he always told us it wasn't a long drive. Every freaking time we had to drive 3 hours. If you drive that long in Belgium, you're on the other side of the country. This is consistently what my international friends find the weirdest. One person asked me how far it was to drive to California and I said like 20 hours or more. I could have knocked him over with a feather. Every year my family would drive 9-10 hours for a vacation and still be in the same state. We don't even live in a big state. I didn't have any big culture shock, but the first time the waitress brought me a free refill without me even asking was a bit of a what the heck just happened moment. Where I live there is no such thing as free refills, and if you want anything you have to flag down the waitress every time. Other than that specific moment, the other thing I noticed is how unless you're in a city center, it's basically impossible to get anywhere without driving. When eating out back home I'd think nothing of having a few beers with dinner because I could walk, bike, or take public transport home. In the US I couldn't do that cause each time I'd still have to drive 15 minutes back to the hotel. Sadly, one thing I did notice was the other diners, who presumably also have to drive home, had no qualms about having a few with their dinner. About the public transport thing, New York City and maybe Chicago is the only place that you could get away with not having a car. Sadly most other places either have not enough transportation or none at all. When paying cash, people scribbling on the notes with a pen to find out if it was fake or not. But US must have an awful lot of fake cash, or the marketing of the cash pen company must be really good. I can confirm that. I used to work fast food and if you had a $100 bill we had to mark it with a special marker to see if it was fake. It sucked because some customers were only getting $5 worth of food. I always tell people don't use a $100 bill unless it's necessary. The tipping system and tax not included in the prices. Not criticizing the US system, that's their thing. It's just hard to math sometimes. I remember that. It took some getting used to, as the country I am from include taxes in the price before purchase. A young girl beckoning her almost spherical dog with sea butter nuggets said with an appropriately strong accent, "Absolutely flawless American experience." Almost spherical dog. I don't know what to say. It was two things. 1. People sit beside each other on trains and buses. I am Swedish. And 2. The sheer amount of homeless people. LA. When I went to visit Los Angeles, it was nothing like anybody made it out to be. Yes, all the famous attractions etc are there, but holy heck it is dirty. Hollywood Boulevard was riddled with homeless people. It smelt like pee and really was not very nice. It is much nicer in places like Buena Park and Anaheim, which are not far from LA. Would definitely visit NYC again for sure though, had a blast there. Honestly, Hollywood Boulevard was so gross. A stranger looking at me when I was using the toilet. Why such big gaps between the stall doors? Might as well include a viewing platform and binoculars too. Viewing platform and binoculars. Scribbles furiously. I've never been to America, but I was on holiday in Jamaica. One of our excursions got cancelled due to weather and we were booked with a bus full of Americans. Now I don't know if you've been on holiday or not and gone on trips out, but with fellow Brits, we tend to keep ourselves to ourselves with the odd conversation with each other, but with the Americans, they were so loud and boisterous. But it was awesome. The trip we went on was one of the best. All the Americans were having banter with each other about what state they're from. They all got really drunk and even louder throughout the day. On our way back to the hotel, the whole bus was chanting the driver's name just for shoots and gigs. I will never forget that day. I was there for a student exchange some years ago and I was pretty weirded out by the Pledge of Allegiance. Nobody told me you guys do that. So when on my first day everyone suddenly stood up and started reciting some stuff to a flag, I briefly wondered if my organization left me in the hands of some cult school mayo. It first originated as a Cold War thing. Basically they'd make kids pledge their allegiance to the United States. It just stuck after that, though you don't have to do it and usually don't really in high school. Once they learn we're Australian, it's all G-Day Market and put another shrimp on the barbie. Can't even say G-Day right and we don't freaking call them shrimp. They're prawns. All the rest of the Yanks are alright. I heard an Australian comedian Will Anderson put it best. In America you learn 3 references about a country and say, "That'll do." Thank you for Tim Tams by the way. I'm Canadian and took a road trip to Philadelphia a few years ago. Two things that stood out. 1. Giant Christian anti-abortion billboards beside the highway. I wish I could remember exactly what they said, but I remember the wording was aggressive. Like, how the frick is that a billboard on the highway aggressive? And 2. The overwhelming number of American flags. Flags everywhere, on storefronts, on lawns, all over public property, on people's cars. So many flags. It was all very "you're in America and don't you goddamn forget IT." Yeah, the whole "proud to be an American" thing isn't just a song, lol. The military precision of ordering and picking up and where to do either in a coffee shop. We take your money here, and you wait like a good boy over there. Okay, thanks. Someone needs to direct us or we'll get lost, lol. I love Coca-Cola and went to buy a bottle at a store, but what I got was the most disgusting oversweetened drink ever. It's insane how sweet it tastes. That's the high fructose corn syrup being used instead of real sugar. There's a reason Mexican Coke is a thing. Pro tip for Americans near the Canadian border. Canadian Coke uses real sugar as well. Please wait for the border to open. I went to New Orleans. I was surprised by how quick it becomes a bad neighborhood. Like, 1 minute you're at a Mardi Gras parade and the other you've got a shady dude trying to sell you his mixtape. When my dad told him no, he was more insistent and threatening, but my brother went to get him. My dad was a bit behind us and said firmly, "Hey, we're not interested," or something along those lines. Yeah, you just have to ignore people like that. Politeness equals weakness and a potential target. I was raised to be polite to people, but in a city like New Orleans, grifters are everywhere. You have to realize that they're not gonna be offended if you ignore them. They're just gonna move on to the next person. The most shocking thing was that everything was normal. People were really nice. Food was amazing. We had a great time. The cities on the east and west coast all felt very safe. I was more shocked that it wasn't weird, if anything. Goes to show how much the media amplifies the 1% of craziness. Most people are just going about their business, enjoying their lives. You take 5 minutes reading the news and you think the whole country is on fire 24/7. As an American whose entire life has been peaceful, even I sometimes think the whole country is on fire 24/7 after reading the news. Watching TV. How many adverts you have and how over the top and dramatic some of your shows are. Lots of cliffhanger before advert breaks. Odd music. Over exaggerated narration. Massive gaps in toilet doors. The size of portions and things like free unlimited nachos etc. Good shocking though, lol. Use of single use plastics. Plastic bags at the grocery store. Massive drink cartons. etc. and poor recycling options in fast food places. The traffic and 7-lane highways. I was in Atlanta for a few months. To add to this, how hard it was to arrange to meet my BFS friends who lived there, because they lived in another part of the city. More a big city thing, I guess. My in-laws' health insurance bills. Seriously, they were dealing with that whilst I was over there. Absolutely gobsmacking. The huge thunderstorms that rolled in. We don't get anything that epic in the UK. TV used to be great before reality TV took over. Now it is mostly garbage. There's a weird new trend of over-the-top game shows on primetime TV. I hate it. Jimmy some daytime TV, The Price is Right. That you can go through a red light if you're turning right. When I first caught a taxi in Texas, I was utterly shocked when the driver drove through a red light. Also 4-way stop signs. I don't recall seeing any of those in Australia. Well, actually they're supposed to stop and see if it's safe to make a right then proceed, but nobody, but me, apparently, does that. When I moved from Germany to the USA, the most shocking thing I saw was an Aldi store. Of all the stores that I know from Germany, the last one I would expect to be here in Ohio would be that one. Next in line would be the almost competitive nature of religiousness in the USA. It seems less about believing in something, and more about making sure everyone around you knows that you believe in something and they'd better praise you for it. I was in New York, Pittsburgh and Detroit back in 2018. The amount of overweight people. Every time you buy groceries, you get a plastic bag. It's good so you don't need to carry a bag with you, but the amount of plastic waste bugs me. The sketchy alleys and the waste laying there in downtown Detroit and Pittsburgh. The prices on the tags are not what you are gonna pay. Learned it the hard way, lol. In hindsight, I really loved it there. Everybody was so welcoming to us. When we were on our way to Little Caesars Arena, we weren't sure about our route. A guy across the street overheard us and showed us our way. So nice. No sales tax in Oregon, if you want straight pricing. But don't you dare try to pump your own, petrol. Fast food employee asking for your name at the counter and yelling it afterwards so you can pick it up. My 16-year-old self and my friends had a blast saying crazy names to employees and have them yell it out loud. Motels, we stayed at one just off of International Drive in Florida and it was one of the most jaw-dropping experiences of my life. Pimps and raccoons everywhere. It was like a scene from the start of CSI, an interesting way to start a family holiday. Never get the cheapest room available and always check reviews. LOL. The water level in the toilet was always disconcerting. Tipping when they circle what 15, 18 and 20% of the bill is at the bottom. Very passive aggressive. From Ireland. Meatheads. Saw one smoking a pipe while crapping in the street at 9 PM in Tenderloin, San Francisco. They'll stop you at traffic lights and try to get in your car, offer you and aggressively ask you for money. In the UK we have more sedated spice heads that'll ask you for 31p for a bus that doesn't exist and wish you a good day when you don't have cash. It kinda weirds me out that Americans don't know what cordial squash is. Also, cops sat in a McDonald's with guns on. That is not something you would really see here. Cops are only ever really armed if there's been a terror attack, so they don't tend to be mooching around McDonald's. I'm a non-American living in the US for over a decade. I thought I was accustomed to all the weird stuff Americans do, but one time, my GF took to an American Girl doll store, like one of the huge ones that's its own building. And boy, I was not prepared for that. These dolls were treated a little too realistically for my taste. My GF told me all about the accessories that you can buy and the dresses and all the names and stories of all of these dolls, which are surprisingly involved. For example, she told me about how she had the American Girl doll for the Great Depression era, which came with a desk and little typewriter and a bunch of very accurate dresses. Then the store itself was filled floor to ceiling with boxes of these dolls. I'm a little freaked about this, but okay, maybe they're just super collectible. It happens. I've heard of the Cabbage Patch Kids, so I know Americans love their dolls. I was not prepared, however, for the second floor. It was like a mall geared for little girls and their dolls. There was a hair salon place where there was the chair for the girl with actual hairstylists and a second small chair for the doll so you and your doll can have the same haircut. Then there's the milkshake store with chairs for the girls and their dolls. And the cherry on top, and this was told to me by my GF, was that the toilets also had spots for your dolls to sit while you did your business. Everything, and I mean everything, about this store was made for little girls and their dolls to an incredible amount of detail. I was actually shocked as we walked around. Two things that stuck with me. 1. In Chicago there was a guy panhandling with a sign saying need money for insulin. He had his diabetic foot ulcers on display to prove this seemingly. 2. In New York near the Bull statue in Wall Street there was a gold-plated Ferrari driving down the street. A guy hawking something or other was very impressed with this Ferrari, taking photos and such. Made me realize that in general Americans want to be the guy in the Ferrari and despise the guy with diabetes. In my country if you drove a gold Ferrari down the street you'd get laughed at and mocked, and footless diabetic wouldn't be on the street begging for insulin money. The super strict alcohol and gambling law. I've been in the States with my parents a few times. I was 20 when we visited Las Vegas and my dad wanted to gamble a little bit. I just stood behind him and watched him play when someone tapped on my shoulder. It was a security guy which asked me my age. I told him and he said you need to get off the carpet. I looked around and there was carpet everywhere. Same year I went to a restaurant with my American cousin. I tried to order beer. I'm from Germany so I'm used to drinking since I'm 16. I was asked for my ID. Had to explain I'm from Germany and used to alcohol and the barkeeper said he could lose his job if he gives me beer. But he gave me one. But he gave me one. Irenman. I'm from Brazil and I ate in my breakfast something like milk and bread, but I ate cheeseburger in a freaking breakfast in 7 o'clock. Not really that many shocking things. I live up in the Northern Ireland or the north of Ireland, so I'm used to guns and lots of flags. The only odd things were, the chocolate sucks. It's not just the weird vomit taste, it's also just bland. The pavement doesn't get as much care and attention as the roads. I think you're expected to drive even to nearby shops. There's a lot more homeless people around. The servers are overly friendly. I can't tell if it's because they want tips or because that's just the culture. In some restaurants at home, it's hard to get the server's attention. In America it can be hard to get them to leave you alone. There's a happy medium to be found. The food all seems very sugary, even things like burgers. I don't mind it. I like sugary food, but it is odd. Everyone talks loudly. I knew that would be a thing because of American tourists. The wildlife. Like, you could just look out of your window and see a squirrel. I was in Colorado and we waited 2 hours for hundreds of bisons to cross the road. Mountain goats and deers just chilling by the trail. We saw wolves in the Yellowstone. In France, home, I saw a fox once, 2 rabbits, a boar and a family of hedgehogs. These are new and living underneath my window, in my entire life. Not super exciting, but not getting ID'd for smokes as a teenager visiting California because you're obviously Canadian. Also, why the heck does your iced tea taste like that? If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.